They thought I'd crumble when they brought his mistress to my baby shower. His mother smiled as she handed me divorce papers. But what they didn't know? I wasn't just a pregnant wife they could discard. I was about to flip their entire world upside down. I thought I'd found my fairy tale. I met Cameron at a charity gala in Manhattan. He was charming, successful, and he looked at me like I was the only woman in the room. He came from old money, the kind that built empires in pharmaceuticals, the kind that had their name on hospital wings and university buildings. I was an architect, passionate about my work, building a career I'd fought hard for. But when he proposed after just 8 months, I said yes without hesitation. Looking back now, I can see all the red flags I ignored. The way his mother, Patricia, looked me up and down at our first meeting, her smile never quite reaching her eyes. The way his sister Diane would constantly bring up his ex-girlfriend, the blonde debutante from the right family, the right background, the right everything. But Cameron would squeeze my hand under the table and tell me later that I was all he needed, that his family would come around. I believed him because I wanted to. I gave up my architecture firm to support him. He said the family business needed us both, that we were a team. I planned galas, smiled at endless dinners with people who mispronounced my name on purpose, and swallowed every microaggression with grace. When Cameron asked me to step back from work entirely, saying we should start a family, I agreed. I thought I was building our future. 6 months into my pregnancy, everything started shifting. Cameron worked later and later. His phone was suddenly password protected. He'd take calls in other rooms, and when I'd walk in, he'd quickly end them. Family dinners became even more tense. Patricia would make comments about certain women who trapped men with pregnancies. Diane stopped pretending to be civil altogether. And Cameron? He stopped defending me. He'd just sit there, silent, as his family picked me apart piece by piece. Then came the baby shower. Patricia insisted on planning it herself. Every time I tried to be involved, she'd wave me off, saying she wanted to give me this gift, that I should just relax and enjoy being celebrated. Something in my gut told me to be worried, but I pushed it down. Maybe I was just being paranoid. Maybe pregnancy hormones were making me suspicious of nothing. The day arrived, and I have to admit, Patricia had outdone herself. The venue was gorgeous, all white and gold. Flowers everywhere, a string quartet playing softly in the corner. All of Cameron's family and friends were there, people I'd tried so hard to win over for 3 years. I walked in wearing a flowing dress that barely contained my 6-month belly, trying to feel beautiful, trying to feel celebrated. That's when I saw her walk in, tall, blonde, perfect in a way that made my stomach drop. Natalie. I'd met her a few times at company events. Cameron always introduced her as a business associate, someone from the PR department. But the way she walked into my baby shower, the confidence in her stride, the way Patricia immediately went to her side with a smile that was actually warm, I knew. In that instant, I knew. The room went quiet. Patricia clinked her glass and everyone turned to watch. My heart was pounding so hard I thought I might pass out. She started talking about family, about legacy, about the importance of protecting what generations had built. Then she said it. We're here to celebrate new life, but we must also acknowledge truth. Natalie is carrying Cameron's child, a child who will be raised in this family, who will inherit what is rightfully theirs. The room started spinning. I looked at Cameron standing by the wall, and he wouldn't meet my eyes. He just stared at the floor like a coward. Natalie touched her stomach, barely showing, maybe 3 months along. The math made me sick. He'd gotten her pregnant while I was already carrying his child. Patricia walked over to me, still smiling that cold smile, and handed me an envelope. Inside, you'll find divorce papers and a non-disclosure agreement. Sign them, take your settlement of $2 million, and leave quietly. We'll tell people you had a nervous breakdown. Very common in pregnancy, no shame in it. But you need to understand, dear, this family has standards. We tried to make this work, we really did, but you were never going to fit in here. It's better this way. I stood there, 6 months pregnant, in a room full of people who'd watched me be humiliated. And nobody said a word. Not one person. They'd all known. This whole shower was a setup, a public execution designed to break me so completely that I'd have no choice but to take their money and disappear. I didn't cry, I didn't scream. I didn't give them the satisfaction. I took the envelope, looked Patricia dead in the eye, and walked out without saying a single word. Behind me, I could hear the party starting up again, like nothing had happened, like they hadn't just destroyed someone's entire life. My friend Rachel picked me up. She'd been outside, not invited to the shower, and when she saw my face, she didn't ask questions. She just drove me to her apartment and held me while I finally broke down. I cried for hours, for the marriage I'd believed in, for the family I'd tried so hard to be part of, for the baby I was bringing into this mess. For 3 days, I barely moved from Rachel's couch. Cameron's lawyers called repeatedly. They wanted an answer. They sent emails with deadlines. The message was clear: sign and disappear, or they'd make my life hell. They had unlimited resources, unlimited power. What did I have? A belly full of baby and a heart full of rage. On the 4th night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about all the strange things I'd noticed over the past year. Cameron locking his office at home, something he'd never done before. Hushed conversations with Patricia that would stop the moment I appeared. Business trips to the same city over and over, always with Natalie going at the same time. Documents I'd once seen him shoving into a drawer when I walked in unexpectedly. Then I remembered something. When we first married, Cameron had given me access to his cloud storage for the home office. He said it was practical in case he ever needed something and couldn't access it himself. In his arrogance, in his certainty that I was just a pretty face he could discard, he'd never revoked that access. At 2 a.m, I opened my laptop. My hands were shaking as I logged in, half expecting it not to work. But it did. And what I found in those files made everything else pale in comparison. There were folders and folders of documents, test results, medical reports, legal correspondence. And slowly, piece by piece, the real picture emerged. The pharmaceutical company's flagship drug, the one that had made them billions, the one they'd just expanded for use in pregnant women, was causing severe complications. Birth defects, miscarriages, maternal hemorrhaging, they'd known for over a year. The internal tests had shown it clearly. And instead of pulling the drug, instead of warning doctors, they'd buried it. There were emails from Patricia to the legal team discussing payoffs. 7 women so far, all paid to sign NDAs, all their medical records sealed. There were projections showing how much profit they'd lose if they came clean. And there, in black and white, was Natalie's role in all of it. She wasn't just Cameron's mistress. She was the PR director actively helping craft the cover-up strategy, the public messaging that would protect the company if the truth ever came out. I sat there, 6 months pregnant with the child of a man who'd helped poison other pregnant women for profit, and something inside me crystallized. I wasn't sad anymore. I wasn't heartbroken. I was furious. I spent the rest of the night downloading everything. I'm an architect by training, but I'd specialized in something specific during my graduate work: forensic documentation for legal cases. I knew how to preserve evidence, how to create chains of custody, how to make sure nothing could be dismissed or destroyed. I encrypted everything, created multiple backup drives, and stored them in 3 different locations: Rachel's safe deposit box, my lawyer's office, and one with a journalist friend who owed me a favor. Then I made my calls. I contacted my old professor who now worked with the FDA. I reached out to a friend at the Attorney General's office, and I called Gabriel, an investigative journalist who'd won awards for exposing corporate corruption. I didn't tell them everything yet, just enough to get them interested, to make sure that if anything happened to me, someone would know where to look. The deadline Cameron's lawyers had given me arrived. They showed up at Rachel's apartment at precisely 10 a.m, 2 men in expensive suits carrying briefcases full of papers that would erase me from the family entirely. I invited them in, offered them tea like a proper host, and watched them exchange glances like I was a foolish little girl who didn't understand how the world worked. I read through the papers slowly, letting them think I was confused by the legal language. $2 million, full non-disclosure agreement. I would agree to never speak about the marriage, the family, or anything I might have learned during my time with them. If I violated it, I'd owe them $50 million in damages. They'd made sure the penalty was so high that I'd never risk breaking it. I signed my name at the bottom. But I'd made some changes in pen first. I crossed out $2 million and wrote $50 million. I added a clause requiring a public apology from Cameron and Patricia, and I included full ownership of the beach house that was technically in both our names. The lawyers actually laughed. One of them said, "Mrs. Whitmore, I don't think you understand your position here. You have no leverage. Sign the original terms, or we'll make sure you get nothing." That's when I slid a folder across the table. Inside were copies of just enough documents to make my point. Test results showing the drug's dangers, emails discussing the cover-up, a list of the 7 women they'd silenced. "These are copies," I said, keeping my voice steady even though my heart was racing. "The originals are already with the FDA, the Attorney General, and the Washington Tribune. Your drug has harmed pregnant women. Your company knew about it. Your family orchestrated the cover-up, and now it ends." I've never seen 2 men turn that pale that quickly. They grabbed the folder, grabbed their briefcases, and practically ran out the door. I knew they were heading straight to Cameron and Patricia. I knew I'd just declared war on one of the most powerful families in the state. But I also knew I had the one thing they couldn't fight: the truth. Within an hour, my phone started ringing. Cameron, Patricia, Diane, lawyers. I didn't answer any of them. I'd hired my own lawyer now, someone Rachel had recommended who specialized in whistleblower cases. Everything went through her. The emergency family meeting they called was one I obviously wasn't invited to, but my lawyer was. She told me later that Patricia had raged, threatened, demanded to know how I'd gotten those files. Cameron sat there in shock, apparently only just realizing what they'd been doing, what he'd been part of. And Natalie? She'd apparently started crying, saying she didn't know it was this bad, trying to save herself. My lawyer delivered my terms clearly. $50 million settlement. The beach house transferred entirely to my name. A public statement acknowledging the marriage ended due to Cameron's infidelity and full cooperation with federal investigations, or I'd make sure every document went public immediately. They tried to threaten me. They said whistleblowers could be charged with theft. My lawyer reminded them that threatening a federal witness was a crime. They said they'd drag me through court for years. My lawyer reminded them that every day in court would be another day of news coverage about dying babies and covered-up test results. It took 48 hours for the first news story to break. Gabriel had worked faster than I'd expected. Pharmaceutical giant faces federal investigation over hidden drug risks. The stock price plummeted within hours. By day 3, the FDA had seized documents and suspended the drug pending review. By day 5, the Attorney General announced a criminal investigation. Cameron tried to call me directly, bypassing the lawyers. He left a voicemail saying he didn't know, that his mother had handled everything, that he'd been kept in the dark. But I'd seen the emails with his name on them. He'd known enough. He'd chosen profit over pregnant women's lives. He'd chosen his family's empire over everything else, and he'd chosen Natalie over me. Patricia's world crumbled fastest. Once the investigation started, more women came forward. The 7 who'd signed NDAs found lawyers willing to break those agreements in the face of criminal conduct. 3 more women who'd stayed silent out of fear finally spoke up. The stories were horrific. Babies born with severe defects, women who'd nearly died in childbirth, families destroyed by medical bills and grief. Natalie, desperate to avoid charges herself, turned on everyone. She provided more documents, more emails, more evidence of the cover-up. The relationship with Cameron ended immediately. She moved back to her home state, her career destroyed, her name forever attached to one of the biggest pharmaceutical scandals in years. 3 months after that baby shower, I signed the final settlement papers. $50 million. The beach house with its ocean views and separate guest cottage. Full acknowledgement that Cameron had been unfaithful, and a clause that said I was free to speak about everything except the most sensitive company secrets unrelated to the safety issue. They couldn't silence me anymore. I moved into the beach house before my due date. Rachel helped me set up the nursery in a room with windows overlooking the water. I painted it myself, soft yellows and greens, peaceful colors for a peaceful, fresh start. My real friends visited, the ones who'd stood by me, the ones who'd never cared about Cameron's money or his family's name. I gave birth to my daughter on a Tuesday morning with Rachel holding one hand and my mother holding the other. Cameron wasn't there. He didn't call. His family sent nothing. And I realized I didn't care. I looked at my beautiful baby girl, all 10 fingers and 10 toes, healthy and perfect, and I named her Grace. Because Grace was what had carried me through. Grace was what they'd never had. And Grace was what my daughter would learn from me. The legal consequences for Cameron and his family continued for months. The company filed for bankruptcy, unable to survive the lawsuits and fines. Patricia faced conspiracy charges. Cameron took a plea deal that included prison time, though far less than he deserved. Diane lost the trust fund she'd been living off when the family's assets were frozen. As for me? 1 year after Grace was born, I did something I'd never imagined. I used part of my settlement to start my own firm, but not for architecture this time. I created a company that helps women document abuse, corporate malfeasance, and corruption. I hire forensic experts, lawyers, and investigators. We work on contingency for women who can't afford justice. We've helped dozens of women already, and we're just getting started. Last week, a letter arrived from the prison where Cameron is serving his sentence. I recognized his handwriting on the envelope. For a moment, I just held it, thinking about the girl I'd been 3 years ago, the one who would have ripped it open desperately, hoping for an apology or an explanation, but I'm not her anymore. I walked to the kitchen trash can, and I dropped it in without opening it. Some chapters deserve to stay closed. Some people don't deserve your energy, your forgiveness, or your time. That evening I sat on the beach with Grace playing in the sand beside me, her little hands grabbing at shells, her laugh floating on the ocean breeze. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. My phone buzzed with a message from a new client, another woman who needed help, another fight for justice that I was ready to take on. And I realized something. They'd tried to break me. They'd humiliated me, betrayed me, and discarded me like I was nothing. But in doing so, they'd freed me. They'd shown me who I really was underneath all the trying to fit in, all the molding myself into what they wanted. I was stronger than they'd ever imagined. I was braver than I'd ever known. Grace looked up at me and smiled, her eyes bright with innocence and trust. And I smiled back, knowing that I was raising her in truth, in strength, and in the kind of grace that comes from surviving what should have destroyed you. They thought they could silence me with shame. Instead, they gave me a voice that echoes louder than they ever could have feared, and that's how a woman they tried to silence became the voice that brought them all down. Never underestimate someone who has nothing left to lose and everything to fight for. If this story inspired you, smash that like button and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Drop a comment telling me what you would have done in Vanessa's position. And remember, subscribe for more stories of incredible comebacks and sweet justice. Until next time, stay strong.